I appreciate your listening in. And not only thanks obviously to Robert, but to others whom we've already heard about during the conference, to Sabine, to Laura, and to all the people at the Centre for Ideas in Society for organising this, as well as the many sponsors that have helped to make it possible. So what I want to do tonight is to try to rethink the relationship, not of any of those words in that order, because that's Tom Mitchell's talk later. Rethink the relationship of the media and the environment through green citizenship, and how green citizenship might help us to avoid one of the catastrophes that supposedly looms around us via our ecological crises. And what I'm going to do is question the widespread consumer and intellectual enchantment with media technology, the fetish of the technological sublime, emphasizing instead politico-ethical challenges that are posed by this looming catastrophe. I begin with the question, what is green citizenship? Then I proceed in a slightly adolescent way to trash media technology. Then I interrogate the media fetish and media polluters, and I conclude with the rather overdone question, what is to be done? So, okay, what is green citizenship? And I'll only speak for half an hour, you'll be pleased to know. Classical political theory accorded representations to citizens, as we know, through the state. The modern economic addendum promised them a minimal standard of living, and the postmodern cultural version guaranteed access to communications. Put another way, the last 200 years of modernity have produced 3 zones of citizenship with partially overlapping but also quite distinct histories. These zones of citizenship are the political, the right to reside and the right to vote, the economic, the right to work and to prosper, and the cultural, the right to know and to speak. They correspond to the French revolutionary cry, liberté, égalité, fraternité, and the contemporary version from the Argentine left, ser ciudadano, tener trabajo, y ser alfabetizado, respectively liberty, equality, solidarity, French revolutionary cry, Argentine contemporary version, citizenship, employment, and literacy. The first category in each case concerns political rights, the second, material interests, and the third, cultural representation. Clearly, citizenship can be invoked to argue for democratic responses to climate change and other environmental questions that provide the backdrop to what I'm talking about. Because these issues transcend both state boundaries and commercial rents, they must be managed by international organizations. This is neither new nor dissociated from national citizenship. Away from the tired utopic hopes of world government on a grand scale, international organizations have been working for a very long time, sometimes quietly and sometimes noisily, to manage particular issues. Seafaring, telecommunications, football, accreditation, Catholicism, postage, airways, sea lanes, and athletics come to mind. Their business is sometimes conducted at a state level, sometimes through civil society, and sometimes through both. In almost every case, they encounter or create legal and political instruments that make them accountable to the popular will of sovereign states, at least in name. Whilst that popular will may frequently be overdetermined or overrun, it remains a key site of change via representative government. We have seen this operate for both good and ill in environmental debates over everything from bald eagles to building codes. Of the 3 citizenship discourses that I've enumerated, economic citizenship is, in my view, the most powerful, and it is adding to the burden of environmental costs because of its growth ethic. This ethic welcomes increases in everything. In media terms, the other key word, if you like, for me tonight, that means the celebration of more outlets, more proprietors, more publics, more social networking, more use, more discourse. The indices used, for example, to gauge political participation derive from this ethic of growth. Those indices fetishize increases and decreases in such measures, always fearing diminution. When it comes to the role of the media in democracy, anxiety or satisfaction are expressed over changes to numbers that stand for growth. Consider such topics as cross-media ownership, voting in reality television plebiscites versus voting in parliamentary elections, participation in citizen journalism, the content and readership of blogs, debates over imported versus exported screen drama, and questions of ratings for presidential debates. These governing assumptions, the governing assumption of more is better, are inexorably grafted onto political and cultural citizenship from the growth logic of economic citizenship. To advance democracy, this logic goes, media channels must proliferate. To enhance pleasure, this logic goes, media technology must spread far and wide. And you can see I am not immune. But perhaps this is short-sighted. Economic citizenship predicated on limitless media growth confronts a serious challenge to its goal of an egalitarian infrastructure of consumption and participation, because it omits the impact on climate change of media technology and uptake. The alternative, which I want to propose, is to support a more sustainable development of this infrastructure that accepts a subordinate role for economic citizenship within limits pressed upon us by the ecosystem. As I was first drafting this paper, I was sitting in a tequila bar in Mexico City, the world's ultimate tribute to developmentalism and urbanism gone beyond the norm, and perhaps my favourite, much-loved city. Maybe 24 million people, a quarter of the entire country's population, inhabit what some would regard as a grotesquely polluted monument to growth, that others would regard as a beautiful monument to the popular classes, expressed through its rich cultural history and museological and statuary investment in campesinos, or indigenous rural workers, mediated via socialist realism. The air is putrid from steaming diesel at the same time as the buildings are laden with public stories. Together they form La Ciudad de Esperanza, the city of hope. Why hope? Because people have flooded to it as their subsistence or agricultural livelihoods have been imperiled. They end up there as inadvertent human tributes to growth and neoliberalism. Do they offer lessons in green citizenship? I think they do, and I'll return to them in my conclusion. For now, let's see how green citizenship is in play. Modernity accelerated the production and distribution of goods in a struggle for the most effective and efficient forms of industrialization, with devil take the hindmost and no thought for the environment. Postmodernity inaugurated an ever-increasing range and impact and awareness of these iatrogenic risks. As technologies and markets became better, they caused greater potential and actual hazards, as well as delivering greater and actual pleasures. In turn, these potential and actual hazards became the objects of predictive technologies and markets for risk management. As a consequence, claims to rights have expanded to include clean air and water. National boundaries and national interests have been brought into question by the border-crossing impact of despoliation. More than an addition to the rights and responsibilities of territorially based citizenship, green citizenship is a critique of them, a corrective that looks to saving infrastructure and heritage from the perils rather than the pleasures of capitalist growth. Bypassing contemporary needs to enter the sphere of historic and future obligations, it transcends conventional political and economic space, looking centuries into the future. And it necessitates, specific to my concerns this evening, an eco-ethical orientation toward the media, which in my hands means trashing media technology. We need to reduce political, economic and cultural investments in media technology. Put more greenly, we must settle on how much media technology and how much media textuality are enough to sustain political, economic and cultural needs while protecting the earth. The global information and communication industry is responsible for an astonishing 2% of all